All right. Welcome to episode 2 of the Breaking Chains.
That's you wanting to do the intro.
Let me try one more time.
No. Welcome back, guys. Thanks for joining us again at our Breaking Chains podcast. We're really excited to dive in today on this really touchy subject.
Very touchy. Very touchy.
So what we really want to talk today about was trauma, and not only how we recognize trauma, like what even is it, but how we deal with it, how we cope, and how we heal from it. So yeah, big.
I think trauma is one of the toughest things for any of us to deal with, and it's one of those things that definitely doesn't discriminate across the board. Every single one of us has experienced some way, shape, or form trauma, adversity, and we all have found ways to cope with it in one way or another, just to try to overcome it or to just deal with it. Mm-hmm. So I think this topic can actually really start some type of path towards people getting out of their funk, and honestly starting to live a new life.
Yeah. I think we can really touch on this. Not that we're psychiatrists or psychotherapists, but we've done a lot of our, inner work, inner healing, and relationship healing together. And I think being partners, you and I, have led us to a place to kind of see ourselves. When we started dating, when we had our first date, I think we were just so shocked how many similarities there were, like white mom, black dad, kind of, my family's from the Caribbean, so we got hit. Your dad's African American, you got hit. So a lot of physical abuse.
Yeah, I feel like we connected on the adversity.
Yeah, but more so overcoming it,
of course.
Right? We have all this crazy stuff that happened to us, but we made it, and it's in a way that I'm not down and out every day. I still like to have fun and meet new people and have relationships, but we got even deeper, and while we did have our relationship and going through the years, I think more came up. And so trauma, what is trauma?
What is trauma?
So different for everyone, and there are so many different types.
I think it depends completely on your own unique experiences. But honestly, trauma can be physical, it can be psychological, it could be emotional, it can be all different types of trauma.
Right.
And
so an example of a physical, crazy traumatic experience would be maybe an accident, like a car accident. That could be traumatic.
Definitely.
Or somebody doing something to you, like a sports, right? You could have a traumatic injury.
Or getting robbed, or getting mugged.
Getting jumped.
Yeah, of course.
Traumatic. But when it comes to psychological, emotional, a lot of that stuff happens in our childhood before the age of 7. And, we all grow up in different types of households, but different attachment styles can be traumatic to our life experience, whether we're lied to a lot as children, or we're gaslit, we're led to think. That's people's favorite word these days, so I had to throw that in there. Gaslighting me. Gaslighting's huge, right? Where you feel crazy because somebody else is making you feel that way.
I also think it's important to note that, like you said, a lot of trauma comes from childhood. Mm-hmm. So I've read and heard and from multiple sources that literally between age 0 when you're first born into age 7, you're being programmed. It's almost like your operating system is being programmed by your surroundings, your environment, your family, society in general. And so as you age and get older, you're not even necessarily aware that you've already been programmed and are dealing with these things.
Right. Joe Dispenza is a good one. I think that we've dove into him a lot, really helpful, and a lot of techniques. If you're ever interested in, the science behind this all, like the traumatic download, and then how we respond to that, and then how we undo it. Joe Dispenza is a really good author and teacher to help you go into how to deal with that. But
what's the name of his first book?
I don't know the name of his first book. He has a book called The Placebo Effect, which is an interesting one. If you think about the placebo effect, we're always taught that like drugs work, right? It's the drug that's working. What they don't talk about in drugs, and this is off topic, but what they don't talk about in drugs is the placebo effect, that the drugs work when they're not even the drugs, when they're sugar pills, because your mind believes it so much that it's working, that it works. So that's a whole nother psychological thing. And, you know, I'm big on that. But so to get more into like the trauma, though, we have to recognize many times that we even have it, and how our lives are played out with the trauma. And a lot of times we store it in our body, or we have patterns and habits that create a lifelong, up until we do recognize it, situation. So do you want to share how maybe trauma has affected you in your body, in your life?
Yeah, sure, of course. I mean, trauma for me, I got to be honest, it wasn't easy to recognize and to become aware of it. You know, obviously starting to work out at 15 years old, I must have found an outlet with working out. Right. It was almost like, okay, I have to pretty much bypass my childhood and things of that nature that were traumatic to me personally, because nobody can understand my experience except myself. Right. But as I've gone through that process, it wasn't until I've become decades later where I can start to look back at my life and see traumatic experiences. And I have to actually thank you for a lot of that. I think going through our relationship, being somewhat of a bull, right? Like where at all cost, I'm going to survive. I'm going to grow. I'm going to thrive somehow, some way. And having that mindset from a young age, I guess I kind of have had the inability to look deeper inside myself and my emotional side of things and the traumatic experiences.
So busy getting somewhere that maybe you were never here.
Correct. So always going somewhere. And yes, you're right. Most likely to not deal with here, because maybe either I never knew how to deal with what's here right now, or I was never even just aware that I was supposed to deal with what's here right now to actually transcend those things to allow my life to open up and become more spacious.